So first things first, a huge round of applause for Kate. Thank you so much for being here with us today. I feel like that was such a great hype reel, first of all, but a really good kind of introduction from a high-level perspective to your story and all of the incredible things you've accomplished as a female entrepreneur.
Thank you.
Of course, but I think a great place to start, something that I gathered, obviously, and love, is that you really got into this industry to solve your own pain point and your own problem. And I'm a big believer that some of the best businesses start that way. So let's start there.
Yeah.
You know, how you turned your personal pain into this incredible company.
So, well, first off, this is so full circle because I don't know if those of you know my brand history, but I was conceived in Cayucas from my dad. My dad actually got his master's degree here at Cal Poly, and my parents moved here and moved into Cayucas. And then when I was in college, I decided to move to Cambria. And I started Kate Somerville, well, my skincare journey at 1250 Peachtree here in San Luis Obispo. So this is really full circle for me.
That's awesome.
So you can make it from anywhere, especially here. This has a really good luck city. So anyhow, yeah, I grew up with eczema. And I still have eczema. In fact, I had probably one of the worst breakouts I've had in my life about 3 weeks ago. So I'm still on the skincare journey of trying to figure out my own puzzle. And one of the things that gave me was a compassion for others that are going through what I go through and not feeling comfortable in my own skin in many ways, right? Just you can kind of see how I grew up, but I just wore all my emotions in my skin. So when I was younger, my parents, we lived on a farm, and my mom put goat's milk in my bath once. And I was like, wow, that kind of changed my skin. And so that kind of started me on my own skincare journey to like figure out my own journey. And then fast forward in college, a friend of mine was a dermatologist, and it was really when I moved to Cambria, because I was waitressing 3 jobs there, and I just needed to figure out my life because I knew that wasn't it. And she's like, you should do skincare in a doctor's office. My nurses are starting to do skincare. And this is before doctors even knew what an esthetician was. Now it's a huge business, and it's very well known. So I went back to aesthetic school. My best buddy was going through a program like this, actually. And she's like, I'm gonna help you build a business plan. And so during school, I went through aesthetic school, which is really not rigorous.
And you were how old at this time, by the way?
I was 20.
20, okay.
Yeah, so young. And I was always an entrepreneur. So like, I can remember, because my dad, both parents were teachers, and my mom left when I was 9. So I remember just being in the truck with my dad on the way to school, and I'm like, why do you work for people, Dad?
Screw this, Dad. Like, yeah. I don't want to be this.
I'm like, I'm not going to have a boss. Like, I literally knew that early on, and even in high school, we lived in Central Valley, Fresno, and my boyfriend and I, his dad had a farm, and we would take it's called Coles, it's the fruit, well, a lot of people in this room should know this, fruit that had a scar, and we would take it to all the farmers markets, and we did really well during the summer. And we had a great time. So I just always had that spirit of like, I want to chart my own path.
And kind of just take control of your own destiny. Even
Yeah, for sure.
20, which is incredible.
Yeah, I think, and like I said in that video, it's like when you have kind of a chaotic upbringing. Like I was like, as I got older and I realized, because at 18, guys, you get to choose. That's the cool part, right? Like all the way to 18, everyone's making choices for you. But at 18, because we do a lot of work with foster kids, and foster kids have it really rough and they really don't get to choose. And I tell them, guess what? I know this journey's been hard, but now it's your choice. And I had a mentor. So those of you out there that are looking for mentorship, my first boyfriend, his mom was my mentor. And she looked at me one day and she goes, you know, I was just a mess. I was like drinking too much, like not
Typical 20-year-old.
Yeah.
I mean, come on.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, for sure. And I was living with her because I left when I was 15. And she's like, you know, you have a choice. And I'm like, well, what do you mean by that? She goes, you have a choice of what you want your life to look like. And I was like, because when you grow up in such chaos, you don't know you have a choice. And so I was like, that was an aha moment for me. And I'm like, you mean I can dictate what the rest of my life looks like? And literally not 3 months later, I packed my little bug. I had a little bug, a little 72 Beetle. And I moved to Cambria and I found the cutest little place. And I was like, I'm gonna design my life how I want it now.
And that meant skincare in a doctor's
Yeah,
office.
I mean.
Basically the first esthetician on record.
Yeah, I was one of the first estheticians to ever go into a doctor's office. In fact, I went around to a lot of local guys that you may know their names. And I had, you know, here I am, I think I was 21 at the time.
And you had the business plan from your
I should have brought it today, it's so funny.
Everyone loves the original business plan.
Oh my gosh, I love that thing. And anyhow, I went around and I sat down, and I don't even know why they took a meeting with me. I mean, I called the receptionist, and I somehow got a meeting with these doctors. So one of the things, students out there's a book right now that's really popular, and there's a show. Jonah Hill did a show called Stutz, and it's about his psychiatrist. And there's some tools that this Dr. Stutz does that's so amazing, and one of them is if you have fear, which you will have lots of fear, you know, pick up the phone and dial the first guy that's like the biggest guy, right? Like, what's gonna scare me the most, I'm gonna go do. And for some reason, I was able to do that. And I think ignorance when you're young, like today, I wouldn't do that, right? Like the older you get, ignorance is bliss. So just take the most scariest thing and do it. And even if it's a no, because there's lots of no's, you're gonna get lots of no's. But yeah, you know, and read that book. My son's reading that book right now. It's called The Tools. And and watch the movie, it's amazing.
So they're all shooting you down, these big meetings, you make these calls, you're going in. I assume eventually, given the fantastic hype reel, someone did take a chance on you.
Yeah, you know what? I have to be honest. I interviewed with probably 5 doctors in the area, and they all said yes.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and
okay.
I think because, so back in that time frame, and I was just there at the right time, doctors didn't advertise. And here they saw, this cute young, you know,
Go-getter
that's like armed with a business plan. And honest to God, like, I was like, I have no idea if this is gonna work. But I was scared to death, but they were like, why not? Because I was just adding to their business because they didn't advertise. And I wanted to take care of their client. So I was like, look, you're gonna do facelifts, but you're not gonna change their skin. And I'm gonna come in and do peels and facials and take care of their skin. And I'm gonna actually get more people running through your office. And guess what? They're gonna ask me about the nose job, about, oh, I'm thinking about this, I'm thinking about that. And so it was a win-win for them.
Yeah, you're an acquisition channel. It's fantastic.
Yeah.
Well, and then obviously, you know, incredible journey. I believe it was 15 years all in. but starting very much in the service side of things, integrating into doctors' offices, how did you then elevate to the next level of, hey, this is more than just an acquisition channel for a doctor, and actually, Kate Somerville, the brand?
Yeah. So, I think I always dreamt of that, but that was a journey. So every single step, like even this program that you all are gonna embark on this summer is gonna be like so many pieces to your puzzle, okay? And I call it the pieces to my puzzle. Because my first doctor, I got to just learn and go with him to all the conventions, and I got to learn about peels and injectables and facelifts and how the body worked. And so that was just a learning phase. And then I decided, well, what happened was the products that I was using inside of his office called all the top people that were doing skincare in doctors' offices, and they asked me to become an account executive. And so I ended up being an account executive and going around the country and trying to teach doctors. And I quickly
how to actually use the products.
How to use products. And the founder of that business was a woman that was an esthetician, and she created this product line. So I got to see the inner workings and actually the dream of, oh, this could be something. So every single step, and then when I left there, I just again cold called one of the top surgeons in the world in Los Angeles, and his name was Stephen Hofflin, and he's the one that had a massive amount of celebrities, and I opened a clinic for him, and I learned a lot there because he was an innovator. He was a teacher at UCLA, and he's the one that said, Kate, I think you should, if you really want to do something, you need to innovate for yourself. And you need to start your own product line because you've got 12 different things, people are confused, do your own thing. And I was like, okay. So every step, and then I ended up leaving his office, and I started doing lasers and treatments at celebrities' homes. And that got really tough, right, because of LA traffic. But that taught me also, and I started consulting for another woman that was really famous. And I'm like, how'd she get famous?
Can you say who it was? Or not?
Yeah, her name was Sonia Dakar. She was a nightmare, sorry. I learned many things from her, how not to be, but what I learned from her was she had her own product line. She bought this huge skyrise in the middle of Beverly Hills. She was an immigrant. She was a hard worker. So I learned a lot, but one thing that I learned from her is she had a publicist. And I'm like, okay, I can do that. So because she was such a nightmare, the publicist wanted to leave, and when I left, she went with me. And that's when I started Kate Somerville, and I found this 3 rooms on Melrose Place, and this was a sleepy little tiny street at the time, and now it's like the Mecca of LA. It's like so bustling, I just started like putting those pieces of the puzzle together. So those of you that are just starting your journey, don't be afraid to take a job that may not look like it'll fit. You will get some piece of the puzzle for yourself. So don't feel discouraged if you're going to take something that may not be your end dream.
Right. Well, it's all part of the journey, and it sounds like, you hit the nail on the head. You had all these puzzle pieces, especially basically building to a product line of you've seen products and experienced them on the consumer end, on the esthetician end, then in the doctor, surgical application, and then actually selling and demoing the product. So you were all of these separate experiences really kind of led to you being the perfect person to create your own brand, which obviously you did. What was kind of that initial first product win for you? What was the first thing that you made for the Kate Somerville brand?
So when when I first opened Kate Somerville on Melrose Place, I was mixing on site for my clients, but I had a few SKUs that were already in packaging because honestly, like my husband and I, we started this. I got into the Oscar bag, which was a massive thing at the time. So the Oscar bag, like Chanel wanted to get in the Oscar. I mean, it was like ridiculous, the brands that wanted to be in the Oscar bag. And I don't know, I just won this guy over that was doing the Oscar bag, and my husband and I literally pumped every bottle in our tiny kitchen, 500 square foot kitchen, living underneath your dad's house. And we got into the Oscar bag, and all these celebrities came in, and then the press came, and then what happened was all the retailers started calling me. And one of the retailers that wanted my brand was QVC. And I had never gone on live television, and I was scared to death. And the craziest thing, like to kind of culminate what was happening in my life, my brand became very famous before it was big. And I had Estee Lauder, L'Oreal, a couple other venture capital groups wanting to buy the brand before I even hit retail. So everybody was watching me on my first sell at QVC, and I knew this, right? So I go on air, and thank God that the press had been talking about this one product called Exfoliate. And it used to be called Kate in a Jar. And this is a really good lesson, you guys. So I come out with this product called Kate in a Jar, and it sells out at QVC in 4 minutes. And this is big money, guys, for me. Like this is like $800,000 in 4 minutes.
And this was your first show with QVC?
This is my first show with QVC.
That's amazing.
And so I was so excited. I literally got on the stage and little bright lights like this, and the host was talking to me. I swear, it's like your wedding. I don't know. Have you got married yet?
Not yet.
Not yet. Not yet. On your wedding day, brides know this. You kind of forget about the day because you're so on, and it was like a blur. I don't even know the words I said on that show. But one of the things that happened was another company got upset because my product was called Kate in a Jar, and they had hope in a jar. And so their lawyers, I'm like this big, right, at this time. I was such a small company. And they were like, you can't use that name. And I literally thought my life was over. I mean, I was crying. So I'm like, and the CEO was so mean about it. He was not nice. And so I took that product name and I said, okay, and I had a bunch of estheticians working for me, and I go, we got to come up with a name. Somebody in my group came up with Exfoliate. And Exfoliate became, and is still, our #1 seller across the globe. And it's so funny because that CEO left, I think he got fired because he was so mean. And I'll never forget, I sent him an empty bottle and I said, thank you. But success is your best revenge. And when things happen in your business, guys, you gotta learn to pivot, because that pivot of changing that name from Kate in a Jar to Exfoliate, like, was so massive for me. So don't get discouraged when there's something bad happens, because that could be a massive moment for you to pivot.
Absolutely. Well, it's that quote, don't get even, get better.
Yeah.
I think it's a good one.
Yeah.
And I was going to say, my dad is here. I was raised by an attorney, and so I've been informed you're only really doing well in business when you've been almost sued at least a couple times. So I think they did you a favor. That's at least what my dad tells me to make me feel better.
It's actually, well, I don't want it to be true, but
But I mean, 800,000 in a day, you go from being small to Kate in a Jar is a big problem.
We had our biggest day, and I'll never forget this day. Well, first off, this is another lesson. So I get off the show, and our team, we're all excited, and literally QVC is in the middle of nowhere. Okay,
Isn't it in like the back country of the
it's
Northeast?
yeah, it's in Pennsylvania, it's Westchester, Pennsylvania, and you stay at this really crummy Sheridan, and it's so cool because the people that are there are like, you know, like Joan Rivers was like a friend of mine that stayed next door. I mean, we all hung out, like Christy Alley. I mean, so many superstars stay at this like, and we'd all eat at the Outback next door. And
Sell 800 grand and eat an Outback steak. Like, that's a good Friday night.
Yeah, and so I get, and we're all excited, we're getting in the elevator, and this one woman looks at me and she goes, have fun now, because you're gonna have a bad show. And I was like, she's a Debbie Downer. I was like, you know, yeah. When that bad show came, how many calls did you get? Like crying in fetal position by myself in the middle of Pennsylvania. And you know, there's gonna be ups, there's gonna be valleys, you know, and I don't know how you stick with it. You just do if you're an entrepreneur. Like Elon Musk said something that I really resonated with recently. He was like, you don't wanna be me, because this is hard. Being a business owner is hard. We talked about this, Haley. Like, you're like, oh, there's nights where you're like, how am I gonna pay payroll? How am I gonna make tomorrow happen? You know, it is hard, but it's exciting, you know, and some of the earlier years are my favorite years, you know, honestly. So these are the good times. So I know it's stressful, but these are gonna be your most fondest times of your life right now, is building and having that camaraderie with your teammates, and the ups and downs is fun.
Well, especially because I think, you know, from my perspective of passion, in the early days, you can control so much. So it is so fun. And yes, there's ups and downs, but they're to a smaller extent.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people think as companies get bigger, it levels out.
Yes.
I think the up and down swings just get more severe
They do.
in both directions.
They do.
And to that point, I mean, obviously, incredible success. You have achieved the impossible feat for CPG of you have successfully sold the company, which we'll talk about in a second. But before we go into that level of upswing, let's touch a little bit on kind of the challenges. We've skirted around it, but what were some of those really difficult obstacles that you had to overcome?
Okay, so one of the things that I didn't realize is, and this is after I sold my company, and I talked to a lot of other founders that also sold their companies that were women. And one of them is, she owned Journalogica, Jane Morwind. And, you know, I was beating myself up, and, you know, and she looked at me and she goes, do you realize what you did? And I was like, not really, you know. And she said, did you know that only 2% of women get funded in business? And I'm like, God, no wonder why that was so hard. So I had a lot of sharks in my, and you know, the hardest thing for me is because I didn't have like a dad or someone really like a male figure protecting me. And so I had to kind of look outside to hire people, but what I noticed, especially with my lawyers, is if there was a deal that they could do with these bigger guys, I just felt like I was taken advantage of, for sure. The one thing I'm gonna tell you guys is really understand your P&L, understand your cash flow, understand that this is the biggest thing. I had big, good problems in the beginning. My big problems was I couldn't feed QVC the beast because we were so successful every time we went to QVC, but QVC was on consignment, meaning that it took about almost 12 months to get paid. So I would create a product, I would go on air, I would sell the product, they would ship it out, and then I wouldn't get paid for another 3 to 6 months, and then the returns would hit, right? So what I didn't realize, and this, you know, again, I was an esthetician, I didn't go to business school. This is so amazing that you guys get to go through these programs and be mentored by people that have been through a lot of knocks and can help you, guide you through this. And you also have school. I didn't go to college for this, and that's why I push my son so much. I'm like, go to college, because you're gonna find out how to learn the P&L, to learn how to talk to these really smart minds in the room. You know, now I'm in rooms that are, you know, Harvard grads that have built businesses, big businesses, you know, and also like R&D people that are like, you know, I can't, it's hard to follow them. And so for me as a young woman doing this, there was a lot of challenge and there was a lot of heartache on the business side. So really arm yourself with someone, and this is what I learned, arm yourself with someone that doesn't have an agenda, okay? Because the people that I would arm myself with, I would see switch because they had something to gain on the other side. Private equity, when you take somebody else's money, you have someone to answer to, and these are really smart business people that know what they're doing. My first acquisition was they took out my partner, and we were 50-50, but they knew what they were doing, because as soon as I needed money, they were like, dilute. You know, and the private equity guy said, you're gonna be lucky if you come out of this with 5% of your company. And I fought like hell not to do that. And he wanted to fire me 100 times. And the only thing that saved me personally was that my name and my likeness was part of the business, which is also a detriment. So there's pros and cons to it. In my case, it was a pro, because here I was a young entrepreneur, and I saw the vision and I believed in the vision, and it saved my job many times when they want you out. So when you go to raise capital, the other thing I'm gonna tell you is talk to the other founders, because, and try and get the other founders, you know, where they're gonna really tell you the truth of your partners. That is something, I just looked at the success of my private equity firm. I didn't ask the other founders, and boy, did I find out the hard way that I didn't get in bed with the right people. And so much so that I was set to launch at Sephora, and as soon as I signed a deal with this particular private equity, they said, we're not gonna launch you. And I was so stunned. I was like, why? And they said, we can't tell you why. Later I found out, because they came back to the table about 6 months later, because we became the most requested brand at Sephora, so they had to take me. And I found out because they didn't do well with other founders, and they saw how they treated other founders, and I didn't know this, and boy, did they not treat me well. So, you know, and now I sold to Unilever, and that's a whole nother story, but when you're going, well, first off, if you have a way to not take money,
that's always the way to go. If you can do it, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, if I had a rich dad, I would have loved that, because it would have given me freedom to make my own mistakes. But, you know, yeah, if you can hold on, like for instance, what I learned with Dermalogica is they had a really great cash flow business, because they were selling to estheticians and they were getting paid right away, where I sold to retailers. So she did very well. She kept her business intact. So if you can figure out a way to hang on to your business and grow naturally and fund your own growth, I would recommend that, because one of the things, and I think this is me growing up too, I was always looking for and go like, oh, I need you. I need your money, I need your connections, I need this. And what I learned through that is, I mean, obviously you need money to grow, but I feel like I could have kept the brand more intact that way if I would have grown a little more organically and not so fast.
Of course, and I think that's such good advice, I think, for this crop of entrepreneurs, because that growth at all costs mindset is so often talked about today, but I think there is a darker side of it that's not seen.
Yes.
And wanting to have that equity in yourself is incredible. But I just think, I know that we're up on time, but you've had so many great takeaways today, and I think in spite of everything that you've overcome to build such a well-known global brand, have the successful exit as a female founder, especially starting at 21 with your backstory.
Yeah.
I mean, I think just absolutely incredible for me as an up-and-coming founder in CPG. Yeah. It's incredible to see. So yeah. Thank you again so much for sharing, and a big round of applause. Thank you guys for coming. This was really full circle for me, so thank you.